This is Eric P. Hoglund, and you're watching the Break It Down show. I'm looking forward to meeting and talking, discussing with Tracy McLaughlin today. She's an amazing realtor, nationally recognized out of Marin County. She's just around the corner from me in my little burg in Benicia, and she's doing some amazing things in the real estate space. She's taking concierge and personal service to a new level, and she's just absolutely killing it, both in our market and, now, like I said, she's being recognized nationally. Looking forward to meeting with Pete and Tracy and going through some things and hearing what she has to say. It's near and dear to my heart because I'm a realtor here in Benicia. I have SD Real Estate and Property Management, and we're always trying to take our service to the next level too. And one of the ways we're doing that this year is we're partnering with Save the Brave. And so every escrow we close this year, we're going to be donating $500 to Save the Brave. It's just a great veterans organization. It's a way to help these guys re-enter into society after doing so much for us. They need to have us do a little bit for them. And this is our way to give back just a touch. And so we're looking forward to doing that. Boy, I can't tell you, Pete, how much I've enjoyed the Break It Down show. I can't believe that you've coming up on 1,000 episodes here. It's amazing what you've done. I mean, the breadth of guests that you've had from beginning to end, from everything from authors to industry professionals to veterans, left and right and center and upstairs, downstairs. I mean, every possible way you've done it to have a broad spectrum of amazing guests and great conversation. It's exactly what this world needs right now. And I want to thank you personally, Pete, for the Break It Down show. It's my go-to podcast. Now sit back, relax, get a cup of coffee, because we're about to start with Tracy McLaughlin.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Tracy McLaughlin, and I'm watching the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
All right. I love it. Hey, Tracy. So you probably don't realize this. I'm Pete. That's Eric. Eric is a realtor in Benicia. I grew up in Benicia, so we're friends. And anytime I have someone on like you who's like wants to talk about something at a high end, I don't know that much about real estate. I don't want to say, how do you do it or something like that. I bring a guy like Eric in so he can bring some color. And he was just talking about loan limits. And for the audience, Benicia and where you work in Marin, it's 25 miles apart, not far at all. But it's a world apart in terms of real estate. And Eric was saying how, like in Solano County, the loan limits are lower than they are in Napa or in Marin County. And so that makes a totally different marketplace. So I thought we were just kind of talking about that expertise level with what you guys bring. But anyhow, either way, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on. I know we work with Heather. She's your PR person, and we were going to talk about a number of things. I thought I would get both of your guys' perspective on COVID, and specifically, I know we're stacked up in our house, especially right now with the increased lockdown. So we got 2 people going to college, 2 people running small businesses, and we're all living in the same. And our house is wonderful, but it's modest. It's 1,400 square feet, and that's why I'm in a tent in the backyard. What's the marketplace look like for you out there in Marin?
Oh my gosh, it has been a wild ride this year. That's all I can tell you. If there was a plan on January 2nd of 2020 of how the year would roll out, every single thing got upended. From the SIP orders where we couldn't show homes for 2 or 3 months to all of a sudden this just breakneck speed purchases from people, fleeing San Francisco in more urban markets and buying suburban homes, buying rural homes, even the coast, out in Marin County, which is always kind of a slow market. It's a sleepy market. All of a sudden that just was surging. And people making decisions that they never were going to make. I've sold homes to very high net worth people 3-4 years ago their lives were organized in places like Belvedere or Ross or Tiburon. And all of a sudden they're like, well, my kids can go anywhere now. And I've always wanted to live in Europe, sell my house. So just all this unexpected, unplanned craziness. And, I feel very fortunate. Obviously, you look at all the people whose restaurants are closing and stores are closing. I feel so blessed for the business, but it has just been absolutely a wild ride and unpredictable and crazy. And there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the answer to the question. So
what about like people, just more people? Because, okay, that's for the well-heeled, but what about folks in general who are like, I haven't had a stimulus check in 8 months, my restaurant. I mean, I can't imagine trying to run a restaurant right now. Like, hey, you're open, you're closed. You can have 25%. I mean, how do people project how to run their business well? And you're like, all this food's going to rot. What can I do? It's just got to be bonkers. What is it like for the other end of the market where folks are like, I don't know, are people taking out reverse mortgages? What's happening out there for the folks that don't have the ability to move to Europe?
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so the answer to that is so far, it seems to me, at least in Marin County, that people are holding on. And I think the reason for that is, coming out of 2008-9, where people were overly leveraged and nobody had saved for a rainy day, there's a very different mindset 10 years later. I think younger people save a lot more than they used to. So I feel like people have reserves to get through this, whereas, back in 08-09, you immediately saw short sales and foreclosures and people that were just really overly leveraged. Thankfully, so far, I'm not seeing that in Marin. I can't speak to the entire Bay Area because I'm mostly Marin County, but people are holding on. And look, the other part of this too is think about people's discretionary income. They're usually taking vacations. They're out to restaurants a couple nights a week. They're buying new clothes. They're buying clothes for an event they're going to. They're spending money on live music. Well, nobody's spent any of that money this year. So there is, I think, a little bit more discretionary income. I mean, I understand restaurants and shop, boutique stores have really taken a whack. Yeah. But I do think there's also that to consider when you're talking about the economics of this,
Well, I think I agree. Our markets are, like I said before, I think are quite different in some respects and quite pretty much the same in other respects. And I think people have weathered this much better than, like she was saying, in the sort of bubble. There's no bubble here. The houses have not just retained value; they're still increasing in value during this time, which is a little counterintuitive, I think, to people that are not in the business. But let's face it, California is still, we've got a net gain of people every year still in the state, so we don't have enough real estate to really go around, and especially now that people are in the suburbs in particular, like she was saying, people are moving away from the high density areas. The suburbs are really feeling a bit of a boom in that regard as far as the real estate market, at least especially out where I'm at, because they're coming. We're 45 miles from San Francisco, but we have BART and ferries and things like that. So people are migrating out here.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about like the bubble from '08, which as because we're adults, we're like, that was like 5 years ago. Like we talk in our house, like, wait, is that before or after Sully landed that plane on the river? Because we're always shocked that was 2009. We're like, how can that be? But it is a different thing. You're right. This is caused by an external environment, not like a real estate crash or a banking crash. This is caused by something else, and so there is some value that's held there. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are around here in Orange County where I'm at. It's a mid-century modern kind of home community. And so the lots are just enormous down here. Like a third of an acre is easy to get. Our backyard, I'm in a tent in the backyard and I'm nowhere near the house, right? The house is small, but the yard is big. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are building second dwellings on the property. And they've at least in Orange County, they've changed the laws a little bit to encourage that ability to increase the capacity, because we got a wicked homeless problem down here. Like there's just not enough. There's not enough infrastructure to support the amount of people that we have, and people seem to keep wanting to come here. And so where are we going to put them? And I guess we're putting them in our backyards and building small cottages and full-on giant second homes in the backyards of our house. Are you guys seeing similar things in Solano and Marin County?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that what I'm seeing, yes, these ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are trending right now. People are taking advantage of the municipal governance that allows you to do those pretty easily and freely. And they can even supersede local ordinance. So you get a community that says, oh, you have a 30-foot setback off your rear and side property line to build a second dwelling. The ADU governance allows you to actually exceed that and go into setbacks, so that the timing is good for people to take advantage of that right now. The other thing that I've seen that I think has been really interesting in my business is the cohabitation of the younger and the older. I'm seeing more and more grandparents moving in with their children who have young grandchildren, whether they're living in a detached unit or in a separate space. But I'm seeing a lot of merging of families. I just had 2 clients, a mother and then the daughter with her young children, collapse 2 homes in Marin County and buy 1 large home in Greenwich, Connecticut, because they just want to be together, And if you think about this, we're almost a year into this, they don't want to have to quarantine for 14 days before they see their grandmother. So if they're all living together and they're all, so I'm seeing a lot of that too, which I think is really interesting. Grandparents helping out parents with all this shelter in place and kids homeschooling and Zooming. And it's interesting to watch.
Yeah. It is interesting to watch. Yeah, that multi-generational thing, especially like when you look at the cost of caring for our most seasoned citizens, it can be a bargain at $8,000 a month to put your folks up in a home. And it's way easier, way more comfortable, everything to have them in the house. So I can see that. And then as the baby boomers get older and getting more into this stage of the life where they don't need to work as hard and they can have more care and leisure, that's oftentimes best done in the home because, who wants to put their parents in a home and forget about it, never go see them or have them be unhappy somewhere else?
Yeah.
The trends, the hip trends that happen, like you were saying, that 2008 doesn't seem that far away. Wasn't that many years ago, people were saying, oh, we want a tiny home. The tiny home was the big thing. And can we put a tiny home on this spot? Or can we do this? And now, like she was saying, it's generational homes. We're almost going back to how we were maybe turn of the 20th century, where parents are living with and the houses are getting bigger and ADU units are being put in the backyard so that mom and dad, grandpa, grandma, everybody can be on the same property with their own space. It's interesting how these real estate trends are sometimes quite short-lived, like the tiny home thing. There's not much of that talk in my market anymore.
Interesting.
ADU talk is now the big thing.
The BDU talk.
So,
yeah, what I think is so interesting is, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, you looked at markets like Greenwich, Connecticut, right? These big behemoth rambling mansions, and they were so out of favor with the public. People didn't want to live like that anymore. They want one big open great room with a connection to the yard. They don't need, public rooms A through D to do other things in, because they just want to be near their kitchen island in the family room, right? Well, and those markets were really suffering, those big rambling estates. I have seen, it's been wild to watch. It's almost like COVID was created to resuscitate these suburban markets because they were gone. I mean, I kept thinking, who is going to buy a house in Connecticut? These big, they were selling for half of what people had bought them for 10 years ago. So it's really interesting, like this, just sort of the resuscitation of suburban America happening as a result of this sort of unfortunate pandemic. But it's been so interesting to watch.
Well, how's your investment been from overseas? So you probably see a lot more of that than I would see. Are you seeing a lot of investors coming from other countries, investing in the Bay Area, buying up, or is that kind of slowing down or for your market?
That's really slowed down. There was a lot of Chinese buyers in certain waterfront markets in Marin, San Francisco. But then when the Chinese government started to put constraints on how much money could leave that country in a wire transfer, because they obviously they wanted to protect banking and stuff, that slowed way down for us. So our market is very interesting. It's usually a move up within Marin market, with a small percentage of buyers coming from San Francisco and a very small percent from out of state or out of the country, if you look at the numbers. So yeah, less of a foreign investment market right now. And maybe that's COVID related as well, just the logistics of travel and quarantining and all that.
Talk about the legacy of SD Realty and how far it goes back, Eric, in a second here. But his mother-in-law is a very dear friend of mine. Her name's Candy Swanson. And her knowledge of Benicia specifically, she'll say, oh, that house, yes, they changed the staircase back in 74 and blah, blah. And it's like encyclopedic. And I'm like, how do you keep track of, I mean, it's thousands of homes. But then when I think about it, like I used to work at Costco before there were scanners, and the cashiers had every number memorized. They would like, oh, what's the seasonal number? This is like, like from last year. What's the seasonal number for the wreath again? They're like, oh, it's 08452. And they knew it. Right. So you must have this knowledge in your head, like, oh yeah, Sammy Hagar's house, it's held up onto the hill with the ratchet. My buddy, this is literally true. My buddy who lives in Mill Valley, his home is held up by a tree and a ratchet strap because it's a really nice house. But it's always falling down the mountain. So you must have all this knowledge in your head about these homes and like the quirks and the upgrades and what they're like.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do. You don't know every home, but certainly some of these micro markets that I work in, you sell. So I'm on my third or fourth sale of the same house in some of these markets, which actually really dates me and is embarrassing. But if you do this long enough, you see, you cycle through these homes multiple times and you see what people do to them and backstory of why they're selling. And, it's all good insider market knowledge. So, there's a lot to evaluations in the Bay Area. We just have such variation in topography, microclimates. It can be, 15 degrees colder in Stinson than it is in Ross. And, and the topographical, just all the variation, hillside living, shade versus no shade, ambient road noise, no. It's a very complex business when you really sift through the numbers and how things sell and why they sell for what they do. It's very interesting.
Well, it brings me up. I think I'd love to hear your perspective on this because I hear this from time to time is, oh yeah, you guys, you realtors, you just make a lot of money and you really don't work for it. It really doesn't. And I always kind of think, well, if you knew all the little things that we do every single day and the knowledge that we have to have, like you're saying about the homes, and is this a little bit different than it would be in Ross, than it would be in Mill Valley, and why that is, and understanding that. I read through your website. It's wonderful, by the way. And I love how you've taken it to another level and said, not only am I going to help you buy and sell homes, I've got a concierge service for you. I can help you with other things. Hey, do you need a hairdresser? Do you need somebody to watch your kids for you? That's kind of the important things that people forget that often realtors are doing. I love that you're marketing it. I think a lot of realtors do little things for their clients and they're kind of secret soldiers on that front. I love that you're out front. Hey, look, this is a service I offer. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go to Girl Marin. I just figured, somebody's coming from out of the area. They want to know the best preschools, the best restaurants. What dentists do you like? What internists do you like? We just set them right up, which is, it really makes it easy for people. It's great.
I got to shout out my buddy, Joe Giuliani, who does high-end real estate in Newport Beach. And when he was first getting started, maybe the first house he sold was a wife who was coming out and she was buying the home and setting up the homestead and they had a kid. And so the crib arrives and he's like, yeah, the sale's one thing. Thanks a lot for that. But who's going to help you put this crib together? And so he got on his hands and knees in his suit and put a crib together for this lady. And she's like, you're wonderful. Like you took the time and that load off of someone's back, the hairdresser, whatever it is, that resource that you guys provide. Yeah. What a fantastic way to approach that part of the market. You have sold an ocean of houses. I mean, you are one of the most successful realtors in the nation. And by the way, do not be in any way embarrassed by your knowledge of your market. I'm not going to accept that. You know about these homes because you're good at what you do, I mean, how many people start in real estate, sell their best friend's house, and that's the last one they sell? You are such a powerful resource. I won't allow you to be embarrassed on this show by your knowledge. But talk a little bit about your book, which is up here. Everybody, so Tracy's book right here, it's called Real Estate Rescue, How America Leaves Billions Behind in Residential Real Estate. And it's actually a longer title than that, but that's the main part of it. Talk a little bit about that. And then, hey, you're a realtor writing a book. What the hell?
Yeah. Well, listen, I've seen the movie many, many times where I watched somebody sell a home and I know exactly what they left behind in the way that they approached the sale. And there was one pivotal moment in my career where I watched somebody I knew, not working with me, working with another agent, literally leave $700,000 on the table because she had the transaction,
Wow.
high-end, over $5 million home, run by a friend of hers who had just gotten into the business. And when I brought the first offer, I think for 5-1. The second offer I brought with another set of clients, because that wasn't responded to, was for 4.7 about 9 months later. So 9 months of mortgage payments, 2 staging jobs, and the loss of $600,000 or $700,000, whatever it was. And I thought, there's a book in this. I've got to write a book. And the basic tenet of its book is, we are the least trusted industry that manages people's biggest assets in this country. People just don't trust real estate agents. There's no governance really around what we say or do. We don't have to have a 4-year college education to do this. We can go to Anthony's real estate school and within 60 days be telling people what they want to hear because we need the business. Because of that natural distrust of agents and the hyperinflation of what we think, people think we're worth, the good ones don't get listened to, and they mismanage how they sell their homes. I mean, just think about it. If you were going through, let's just say you were going through a divorce or whatever, unfortunately, you wouldn't just hire a buddy that had just gotten his law degree and say, I want you to represent. You'd probably go to the very best lawyer, or you'd go to the very best doctor if you had, your shoulder needed to be replaced. You wouldn't just toss that business off to a buddy. So what happens in business, in real estate, because it's so personal, someone says, well, Ann Florence just got a license. I kind of owe her a favor. Ann Florence is going to represent me on my biggest asset. Over 40% of America's wealth is tied up in its primary residence. So this book really deep dives into that. And then it goes into every single way that I have seen people leave money on the table and lose money in the sale of their homes. So it's that, and there's also a TV show being formed around the concept as well. Hopefully that will move forward as well.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, just that whole concept. I remember Steven Pinker and those guys were writing about how real estate agents, they kind of put you guys in a bad light because you take the first deal you can get. But you're saying there's an optimal deal. Like, let's take this now instead of spending for a big home, you could be spending $6,000 a month just in mortgage payments. And then, on top of that, like whatever it costs to run that house. And like I said, staging is not cheap. I mean, back when I used to do odd jobs, if you hired me and my pickup truck to bring you some piece of furniture, it's not cheap. It's not cheap. And that's just one thing,
Yeah, no, the premise of the book is, here's what happens. People buy their homes, right? They fall in love with whatever they loved when they bought their home. They're listening to George Michael in the early 90s. They've got a floral Ralph Lauren sofa and a big ornate chandelier. And they just fell in love with that music, and they fell in love with what they bought. And then they never really moved beyond that in terms of what's trending. So really the premise of this book is, I don't care what price range you're in, treat the asset like you would any other investment. Every 5-8 years, refresh the paint colors, change drum chandeliers are $300. Change your old fashioned light chandelier to a drum for $300. Paint the walls white instead of deep yellow. If you have to rent furniture to sell your home from Court Furniture Rental that's modern and trending with younger buyers, it's those types of things that will literally make you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the sale of your home. And so few people resist that because they're still in love with what they emotively connected with when they bought the house. So the book goes through all the psychology behind that and the importance of really keeping track of what's going on with the demographic of people who will buy your house.
Hey, I'm curious, when you talk about how the market evolves and changes, how much does the market changing in Connecticut with these large palatial estates, how much does that impact where you're at? I mean, because high-end people are looking for high-end places, and Marin's a high-end place. Like, is the coast, bi-coastal nature, no big deal to them? And then what drives that change, that big open great room versus a 70s, a million walls, a million doors, lots of wood trim? What drives these things as far as how you see it in the marketplace?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, it's been interesting to watch in California. I do think there is a bit of an exodus of high net worth people going on right now. You can see that with the big tech companies making moves to Texas. Right now, a lot of very high net worth people are looking at even higher taxes and other issues, I think with governance right now that they're not keen on. So those people are certainly creating a market for the purchase of those homes because they're buying in Texas, Florida, Tennessee. I've had a lot of clients go to all of those states, South Carolina. So that's certainly trending right now. And in relation to like how people want to live, It's so interesting. The kitchen island has become the dining room table for most people, right? It's interactive. You want people sitting there while you're creating a meal. Before it was, oh, the help is going in there and we're out here. Everybody, I don't care how much money people have, that is the epicenter or the nucleus of how we live now. So I'm even seeing big 10-foot islands getting turned into dining room tables that seat 10 people. Why even walk 20 feet to serve dinner when you can just sit around a beautiful island and have candles? So that great room concept, and the higher the scale, the bigger that room is, the better. That's really, and Restoration Hardware, that company, it went from a noun to a verb. I restoed my house. Oh, it's been restoed out. So Restoration Hardware and its influence in terms of design, style, how people want to live, what kinds of earthy, great design materials they want to live with. Those things have really slapped us in the face in the last 10 years in terms of what's desirable, what sells for the highest price, et cetera.
And so that makes me think, okay, so obviously someone, maybe one person at Restoration Hardware is doing the buying and leading the buying effort. So that one person's taste is really, it's driving the entire market. I mean, and you're totally right. Like a few years back when I was just simply doing odd jobs, I was always at Restoration Hardware in Berkeley, grabbing, super expensive coffee tables and taking them to places because they really were driving the market. What about all of these shows on, the home networks, the various upgrade shows, like the one down here in Orange County? And by the way, it always makes me laugh whenever Tarek grabs a hammer because he's like, and he can barely swing it, and they're like, it's a new fence, $1,500. It's like, so talk a little bit about that aspect, the tastemakers. I didn't think about how much that, but you're right. The ability to evolve the market through a buyer at a corporation, that's blowing me away right now.
It's so interesting. So the 30-somethings and early 40-somethings, they live so differently than we did. When we got married and we were buying our first home, we were registering for formal things. And we thought once we had money that having designers and long lead times and all those things were important. Restoration Hardware is and Pottery Barn, they're really what has changed that. The younger demographic, I don't care, the more money they have, even the more committed they are to being this way. They want immediate, they want fast, they want easy, and they don't want fancy. And it's really interesting to watch. They want to walk into a magazine photo the day they close escrow, furnish it like that. They don't want long lead times on furniture. They want a certain simple, very simple, kind of tasteful, modern look. And then they want to get right back on their devices and start going back to work. I mean, this computer and this phone have changed real estate, because it used to be, 20 years ago during the initial internet boom, people drove around and they bought the best properties and communities and they wanted to build a monument to themselves. It was all about the best lot. I'm going to spend 3 years and this is going to be better than da-da-da's house. Now they will live in a less desirable location.
Interesting. Yeah.
To walk into something that feels good immediately because they want to get right back on their devices. And I write about this in the book as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that when you blend needs together, as and this must resonate with you. Again, back when my days when I did odd jobs, like you could not have fast, cheap, and detailed. Those three don't go together, so like if you want it fast, you want it instant, you want it to be stylish, and it's going to cost money. These things, there is an exchange of value with that. What are some unrealistic expectations that buyers might have where you're like, we'll get this thing done. However, we're going to have to make a concession here or here or here, that kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue of deferred maintenance and the unknown. Look, there's no ROI when you buy a home and you have to all of a sudden upgrade the electrical with a Zinsco panel that was discontinued, or you've got a failed retaining wall. The land is still sitting up there, but it's leaning, or an effervescence in your foundation, right?
Yeah.
Those are not fun things to invest money in. There is no return for any buyer on putting capital improvements into deferred maintenance. So that's probably the biggest hiccup I run into. People are, the negotiations start And sellers don't understand how expensive it is when they don't keep their homes up. You should literally have a pest inspector and a home inspector come through your home and a roof guy every year and take a temperature check on how your internal systems are doing. And if something's wrong, fix it. If it needs upgrading, upgrade it, because you're going to pay for it when you go to sell the home. You might as well enjoy that while you're living there. It's expensive stuff.
I do know. Like, we're going through that right now. Again, we're in an old neighborhood. These homes are 50 to 70 years old. There's knob and tube electrical, and so when you buy a home in our neighborhood, it's $750,000 at least. And that's for a house that needs a lot of work. And then the couples don't even move in for months because they have all of the wiring pulled out. Like, these are things actually happening live in my neighborhood right now, so they'll spend another $500,000, to modernize and do all that maintenance. You're so right about that. This is hilarious and a perfect on theme topic. We're having our bathroom redone because we had a valve let go, which, that happens every now and then. When we did that, that opened up a whole array of new things. Like, okay, now we have to deal with this. Now under the house, it's raised foundation. Oh, well, no one's looked at the foundation in years. Oh, the foundation guy's got to come in. And then this happened the other day. The bathroom pretty much is back together now. We're going to paint soon, right? And, one of the sons here at the house goes in there, he turns on the light and he puts his hand on the wall and he's being electrified, not like horribly, but he's like, there's electricity flowing through the wall. And it was so electrified that you could take a meter and go up right to like chest high where the shower curtain would be, center of the tub, like nowhere near a wall. And it was like, boo, it was going off. Like, so there was like the new meshing behind the shower had created like an electrical field. And we had to determine where that came from. And it was because we had an old wire. Someone had done some shoddy work. And so whenever you turned the porch light on and got in the shower, you were going to feel some electricity. I mean, it's insane. These things happen. I, at one point, drilled into a lady's wall in San Francisco and something weird happened. And I'm like, something weird's going on. She's like, well, what is it? And like her curiosity got the better of her. I had drilled into a dead cat. It was, it was in the wall. So these deferred maintenance things, not that having a cat is deferred maintenance, but these things, as soon as you break into a wall in an old home, all bets are off. Mold, who knows, Oh,
that's so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but that's just tragically funny. Oh my God.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask about is you were so good at this. I mean, you've sold so many homes. You've done so well. What would you attribute your success to? I mean, it's one thing to know the market and everything else, but you're doing something where people are desperate to come back to you and you're able to have other realtors work underneath you and be one of the biggest realtors in the nation. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. I have to be honest, it's really just very, very long hours. And it's a lot of transparency and truth telling. People think this just happens. It doesn't. I mean, right now I'm number 20 in the country. This year I'll move up because I've done a lot more business this year than last year. And I'm working as hard today, 21 years into my career as I did the first year, probably much harder. So it's just an inordinate number of hours. It's being very, very responsive to clients. It's being incredibly honest and not thinking about a commission, but thinking about a relationship. And I always tell people, I'm not really in the business of selling homes. I'm in the business of establishing and continuing really solid relationships with people by doing the best job that I can without, whether they want to sell or buy. I just had a situation where, I spent 23 hours on a woman's listing and I got great offers. It went up 300,000 over the asking price. This was last week. And all of a sudden she's like, I don't want to sell this house anymore. Now most people would have been upset by spending all that time. And I thought, she'll come back to me. It's okay. This isn't the right time for her.
Right.
So it's a lot of reading people's emotions, the influx and outflow of sentiment, emotion. You're really like a psychologist and a money manager, and a good salesperson.
How often are you talking a person out and saying it's not the right time for you? How that must occur when the person's not in a good position and you're like,
Yeah, somebody just changing their mind. And that's what this COVID thing is doing. People they're in, they're out, they're up, they're down. Yes, we're doing this. No, we're not doing it. It's just the level of predictability has really gone out. And I think that's because this virus is affecting people differently. There's some people that don't have the constitution for what's going on. It's really affecting their psyche, their ability to see clearly, to make good decisions. So you're getting a lot of that bounce in our business of some people just are not as adaptable as others in terms of, what's the plan for this week in the country? I mean, it's crazy, right?
Being comfortable with ambiguity and letting things go at their own pace. I'm a combat guy, so I'm used to all that stuff. Like, we don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. Let's not worry about that. And you can't control what you can't control. And letting go of that need is a big thing. One of the things people are doing, though, and because we've been in the market trying to fix our bathroom, is people are dumping money into their homes, improving it, expanding it, whatever it is. We've seen so much of that down here. It's hard to get someone to even come to your house to do a project. What's your basic advice? Like, where should people put their money if they're going to upgrade something? And obviously, let's first off say, get that deferred maintenance done. Get that roof looked at. You're totally right. Get that termite inspection. But if you're doing fun things and you want to make your home a little better, where do you put your money?
Okay, the biggest game changer without spending too much money is paint and carpet. I have to tell you, now look, if the house is so far gone, if the finishes are so aged, then you really kind of hold tight and you sell for lot value with a little bit of structure value. And this is understanding where that pivot occurs, where to stop and where to start. If your home, let's just say your home is done in the 70s, okay, built in the 70s with high ceilings, but everything is kind of dated out, right? You can do things like reface your cabinets, paint your walls out, carpet, and put in new chandeliers, and you will game change your house. Lighting is a big part of what ages a home. So same with fireplace refacing. I mean, sometimes we go in now for $4,000 to $5,000 and we just plaster straight up an old wall and it looks like a brand new house. So all these things are in my book, all these befores and afters. But if you are on a very limited budget and let's just say you're not even selling your home, but you just want to enjoy it more, it's all about contrast. People are always wondering, why do your houses look so beautiful, Tracy? It's because I'm creating contrast. The floor is dark, the walls are white, there's art contrasting and furniture with playing off that dark and light.
Yeah.
And you have a very interesting visual combination that makes you attracted to the space. So
how often do these things change? Like right now, I picture a home, lots of whites, lots of dark colors, words, love, family, are on the wall somewhere. At some point, that will be a dated look. When does that happen?
Every 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
10 years from now, we'll be looking at, in fact, it's interesting. We've had contemporary homes, glass and steel, glass and stucco, glass and wood. People are now thinking that they feel a little generic. They're a little sick of that look. And guess what? Moroccan tiles with a refurbished, fresh Mediterranean look is starting to finally come back into the marketplace after being dormant for about 15 years.
Huh.
So people are, they're kind of craving color. Black marble, 10 years ago, I was ripping out every slab that had dark, heavy marble. Now black is kind of trending in design right now. So I'm now I just walked into a home in Ross, a very expensive home. I was like, oh my God, you caught the pendulum swing of this being back in. The house was about 16 years old. I'm like, we don't have to rip out your bathroom. I mean, it's so funny. But yeah, these things, and all you have to do is go on House, Pinterest, pick up El Decor and understand what the buying demographic wants right now.
Let me make sure I plug your book again here too. Get Tracy's book, Real Estate Rescue. I can't say that for some reason. How America Leaves Billions Behind in Residential Real Estate. You can get that on Amazon. That supports us. That supports Tracy. And she's, clearly you're an expert. I wanted to ask you, because of COVID and because we're all crammed in our homes now, we've had to look at functional house space differently. Like now I'm in a tent in the backyard. Sometimes I sit in the big chair in front of the TV. Other times I lay flat on my back in the bedroom just to be at, how are you seeing families deal with this? I mean, because everything's happening in the house more than ever before in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm seeing a lot of repositioning of rooms, right? I think right now it's critical if you're running a business, you have to have a place with some kind of protected space away from, just like you're doing with your tent.
Right.
But if you're back east and it's -5 today, you're going to take maybe a pool table room down in the basement with good acoustic. And you're going to close yourself or wall yourself in there and you're going to run meetings out of there. So home gyms and yoga studios really trending right now. a detached or a separate space for offices, really trending right now. And then kind of this concept of almost a classroom at home is really trending right now. I mean, I've got listings where people are bringing their neighbors' kids over. It's a small controlled group of kids that are all learning in one space together, and somebody's taking their former guest house and making it their classroom. So it's a lot of repositioning. And also, you know, what's so interesting is pools, even in less desirable climates, are absolutely trending. Like, because people have to say, look, the kids have been in here all day. They're not going to PE. They're not going to Kiwi soccer. I got to throw them in a pool and let them splash around. So I saw people putting above ground pools in all this year, just like buying big, whatever they used to be, doughboy pools and putting it above ground so their kids can splash around and they've got another experience at home, you know, on campus, so to speak. So
what are your thoughts on solar in terms of, you know, upgrading your house, but making it sellable? And also, you know, do you go for the Tesla battery and refill station for the person who's, I mean, in Marin, come on. I mean, there's a lot of Teslas there.
There's a lot of Teslas there. You know what's so funny? It's interesting. Look, I think that's always a nice thing, but it literally does not provide any return on investment, either of those things. The capital improvements, it's nice, but I don't sell a house for a dime more that has solar panels, whether they're leased or owned, or Tesla battery walls. What's really providing the ROI is the palette, the color of your walls, the color of the outside, how planky and wide your hardwood floors are. Lighting, slabs, you know, classic slab materials with great backsplash in design. That's where the very high ROI is for people, not as much electronics or, you know, I have people come in and they trick out their homes with $200,000 worth of audio visual. I hate to tell those people when I walk through, nobody really cares because those are very specific things. You know, we're looking at, we want the whole concept to appeal to the buying public, and that's done through color, you know, palette and finishes.
And technology moves so fast anyhow. The home studio that was rocking 25 years ago is a joke now. You know, like it's just, it's so.
Yeah, really interesting, actually.
You're part financial planner and advisor. So let me ask you a question. The market has been going bonkers, right? But we're about to go through a presidential change and there's going to be a lot of hedging. What are your thoughts? Like, is the stock market, like, how would you compare the stock market and keeping money there versus maybe now I'm going to invest into a rental property? With the caveat of, hey, owning a rental property right now is a little bit riskier than normal, I would think, because, you know, you can't necessarily kick somebody out because they can't pay rent because they don't have a job anymore. So can you kind of compare those things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've thought a lot about that. I've always been a split screen person where I think keeping money in the market and putting it into your home in the right way, in a smart way, is a really good split screen scenario for people's net worth, you know, and their nest egg eventually. So yes, I believe that, you know, but running out right now and buying rental property, I think you have to be careful about that. I mean, apartment buildings have sort of been tapped out. It's very hard to find great returns because there's been so much buying up of apartment buildings around the country in the last, you know, 10 years. There's still opportunity there, but you've got to be very careful, I think. And then you also have to think about, do you want to be a property manager and people control your home once they're in it? I've seen a couple of scenarios where people have played the COVID card. Sorry, not leaving. I know I was month to month, but I'm sick. I mean, I've seen a couple of my clients have been through challenges with their rental units as a result of this COVID thing. You having to get lawyers, you know, so I think you do have to be careful about that. As far as the stock market goes, you know, it's really interesting. I mean, big tech stocks, you know, tech is doing so well right now. It's hard to imagine that there's going to be any kind of free fall of that. I mean, the people that have money have a lot more money this year than they did last year. You know, it's the service economy that's really being affected by this, but the, you know, high net worth stock invest, I mean, those people have that much more money, right? And I think that's prognosticated to stay pretty stable from what I understand. You know, it's always hard to predict, but.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Cue the crash right now. It's like 2020.
I look at it as investment. You know, I'm comfortable in things that I can control for the most part. And that is having very smart people giving me advice. Like, I have a very good money man who says, yes, Tracy, I mean, I would keep the money here. I rely on the expertise of people that know a lot more than I do about things like that. But as far as your house goes, every house should be somebody's incredible primary, you do have control over that. And a lot of people they're very reticent or reluctant to pay a designer. It's the best money you can spend. Get somebody who's really good at what they do. They don't have to be highly expensive. Don't just pick out a white for your walls, because guess what? The white could have a lot of blue in it. You could end up with like a blue hue in your home. You've got to have a designer to refine the right wall color, the right flooring choices, the right lighting choices. And they have sources. It's so much better than trying to navigate that road on your own if you're not really good at it.
No, that's great advice. One of my friends is Christy McLaughlin. She's a designer out in Danville. And you're right. Like just the lighting has changed so much in the housing marketplace. All this LED, it's like a harder, colder blue light. Like when we walk around our neighborhood at night, the old homes with the incandescent lights are just so much warmer to look in the windows. It really, like, there's a design aspect there that's critical. I wanted to ask you, and then I'll pretty much let you go after that. But I wanted to ask you, someone who's out of California, but they're thinking about moving here for a job or whatever it is. I've had a couple of friends say, I'm going to buy a house when the bubble bursts here in California. And I it's not really a bubble. So, I mean, maybe you catch a bubble, right? But if you're waiting for it, you're not going to find it very often.
I totally agree with you. The rear view mirror perspective of residential real estate here is insane, because what you thought you were paying some kind of record-breaking price for 5 years ago now looks like a bargain. And that is all driven by scarcity of supply. I mean, if you're a real estate investor and you want to live in California, and you want to be careful, you want to stay away from overgrowth markets like, back in the early 2000s, 2005 and 6, there was just massive cookie cutter development in places like Stockton and outside of Sacramento, and Las Vegas certainly got hit by that. You want to stay away from those kinds of large supply markets and invest your money in a place where homes don't come up that often. The lower supply always keeps pressure on pricing, and that's what really drives the investment. So be careful about investing. First of all, I wrote in the book, a broken clock is only right twice a day. It's very hard to time markets.
Yeah, especially if you're not in the market all the time. Like if you're just buying something and stuff. Yeah. Just one last question, and that's a pretty simple one. What should I have asked you that I didn't ask you in this hour?
Oh gosh, that's you're throwing me for a loop. What should you have asked me that you did not ask me?
That's right.
Am I going to write a second book?
Tracy, are you going to write a second book?
I think I will. And it probably will be. You know what it'll be about? Greed in real estate. We're pitching that right now with my PR team. I'm watching a lot of people be very, very greedy in terms of how they're selling their homes. And I think that will come back to bite them with MLS scarring and some other things. So listen, take advantage of what's going on, but don't hyperinflate the value of your home. That will not serve you down the road.
I love it. This is Tracy McLaughlin. You can go to her website. It's her name, Tracy McLaughlin. If you don't know how to spell that, you can look in the show notes or here on the screen. You can see that. And once again, here's the book. Tracy's book is called Real Estate Rescue: How Americans Leave Billions Behind in Residential Real Estate. The expertise that you displayed, and it was too bad that Eric's wireless was going crazy, but that's COVID for you. But it's just fantastic to talk to someone. These are the biggest purchases of our lives, and to have someone as knowledgeable as you come out and write a book and give us a roadmap on what's smart, what's not. From all of us out here in, oh my God, I'm terrified to buy a house, land. Thank you for what you do, because it really matters. You know so much. It's super impressive.
Thank you. I so enjoy being your guest. You ask great questions. It's an honor to be on your show. So thank you.